Hi, everyone. I'm Carrie Johnson of Star Crow Astrology. It's January of 2024, and I'm making this video on the astrology of the next couple of years. So January of 2024 through February of 2026. And you don't need an astrologer at this point to tell you that we live in epic times. We all know that. We can all feel that. We're all fully aware that we are not in Kansas anymore. But the astrology is, well, it reflects how very epic these times are. And it's useful because it gives us an archetypal lens through which to understand this era that we are living in. And the thing about the astrology that is so remarkable for the next couple of years is that we have all of the outer planets switching signs within a very short amount of time, within months of each other. So when we refer to the outer planets, we're talking about the planets past Saturn's rings. So Uranus and Neptune and Pluto. And these three planets are so far away from the sun that they have very, very long transits of the zodiac. And they hang out in any given sign for so long that they really transform the archetypal field, of whatever sign that they're in. They're the signs that correlate to the major sweeps of history, right? The really big historical currents of any given time. So the great astrologer Richard Tarnas talks about the outer planets as operating on three different levels. So first of all, as I already mentioned, Pluto and Uranus and Neptune correlate to the major historical movements of any given time. So if we think about like just a quick thing that happens in the news on one day and it's not really significant, that's not what we're talking about here. We're talking about the major consequential historical movements of any given time that's going to connect to Pluto and Neptune and Uranus, whatever sign they're on in. It's going to speak to the big historical movements. And secondly, the outer planets connect to cultural shifts that happen in response to the big historical movements, historical events. So, for example, if we think back to the 60s, the Vietnam War, um, the Vietnam War was, a big piece of what was going on in the 60s, certainly not all of it, but there was the Vietnam War, and the cultural response to the war, of course, was the peace movement, which was just part of the many people's movements that happened in the 60s. But we can see how the war happens and the peace movement, it has its genesis in response to the Vietnam War in the 60s. And then on the third level, the outer planets connect to psychological shifts that we experience on an individual basis in response to the epic that we're living in, the big historical events of our time, right? So as history does its thing and events happen in real time, our psyche, and as the culture shifts, we're all changing on an individual and collective basis, right? So the outer planets connect to historical events, cultural shifts, and our psychological evolution, both on an individual and collective level. So Pluto is the first of the outer planets to move signs. And when we talk about Pluto, Pluto is the heaviest hitter in the zodiac, astrologically speaking. Astronomy may have demoted Pluto to mere dwarf planet status, but in astrology, Pluto is the heaviest hitter in the zodiac. So in astrology, the farther out a planet is, generally speaking, the more powerful it is. Pluto is the farthest out of the planets that we honor in astrology, and as such, it is the heaviest hitter in the entire zodiac. So Pluto is the planet that goes deep, 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 deep down into whatever is suppressed, repressed, rotten, putrid, hidden, all of the suppressed, repressed kind of psychological material, both in our individual psyches and in our shared reality. Pluto is the planet that pulls that material up and out and brings it to the surface so that we confront whatever it is that is dying. And ideally, Pluto brings death to what is dying and transformation so that we can be reborn on a higher level of consciousness. Pluto is the planet of death and rebirth, and it's also a planet that has to do with power. When we deal with Pluto, and we really deal with whatever is in the recesses of our psyches, when we bring those skeletons out of the closet, we become more powerful. Pluto is a power planet, the most powerful in the zodiac. And when we deal with these Plutonian forces, we become more powerful. So Pluto is moving into the sign Aquarius, and Aquarius is the most populist of all of the signs. Aquarius is about people power. So Aquarius is the sign that is about humanitarianism, right? Aquarius is humanitarian, it's egalitarian, it's futuristic. It can see way out into the future and it wants what is in the best interest of all people. And it has to do with people power. So Pluto is moving into the sign Aquarius for the first time since the 1700s. Pluto has not been in Aquarius since 1778 to 1798. 1798 was the last time Pluto was in Aquarius. So this is a big, big deal. Pluto spends anywhere from 11 and a half to 30 and a half years in any given sign because its orbit is so long, it's stretched out kind of like an oval. So it's a really, really big deal. No one on the planet has lived with Pluto in Aquarius, right? We haven't been in this archetypal field since the time of the American Revolution and the French Revolution and the Haitian Revolution. And I just said revolution 3 times. And that's really, Pluto and Aquarius is a revolutionary kind of combination. So let's take the American Revolution and look at that briefly. You know, the battle cry of the American Revolution was no taxation without representation, right? And the American Revolution was fought to overthrow this oppressive kind of parent country, England. And it was fought, to establish itself as an independent country. So the American Revolution, of course, starts with the signing of the Declaration of Independence on July 4th, 1776. So the United States does have a birth chart. It's referred to as the Sibley chart. July 4th, 1776, Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, 5:10 p.m. is the chart that we use for the United States. So the US natal chart. And Pluto was in very late Capricorn when the Declaration of Independence was signed. So the early battles of the American Revolution start with Pluto in Capricorn, but most of the battle is fought with Pluto in Aquarius, right? And at the same time frame, King Louis XV had bankrupted France, fighting wars in the Americas and with his lavish lifestyle, right? So what France experienced with Pluto in Aquarius was rapid inflation, and inflation that was so extreme because Louis had devalued the dollar to the extent that they experienced rapid inflation and could not afford food. And there's the famous quote, you know, the courtiers go to Queen Marie Antoinette and tell her the people cannot afford bread. And she says, well, then let them eat cake. And historians say that that didn't really happen. But the quote, you know, let them eat cake really does encapsulate how out of touch the aristocracy was with the needs of the people. So the people decide they don't need a monarchy. You know, they overthrow the monarchy and set up representative democracy, similar to what was set up in the United States. And we have this new kind of these new forms of government set up coming out of the American Revolution and the French Revolution. Lots of beheading in the French Revolution. We'll just give an asterisk to that. We'll give an honorable mention to that. And the Haitian Revolution also happened in this period, and it's definitely worth noting this one because it's the only time that slaves successfully rebelled and overthrew their captors. And of course, they set up their own government in Haiti. So that's an amazing thing that happened with Pluto in Aquarius. Last go around. So Aquarius does correlate to technology and technological innovation. The Industrial Revolution also happened the last time that Pluto was in Aquarius. So it's inside of the archetypal field that we're moving into with Pluto moving into Aquarius that we will see major revolution in technology, major revolution in industry. But I, for one, am not counting on technology to save us. What I am hopeful for is a spiritual evolution. We have tried revolution. We have been trying revolution since the beginning of time. And I am not aware of any utopias that have broken out as a result of revolution on this planet. My hope is in a revolution in consciousness, a spiritual evolution, and our psyches, our consciousness being the technology where we see the really big breakthrough happen. What else do I want to say about this? Yeah, we have so many awakening souls on the planet right now, so many awakening souls realizing that the global power structure is not what we have been led to believe that it is, right? So many awakening souls. And a part of the reason that we have so many people awakening during this time is technology and information. When Pluto goes into Aquarius, there is a correlation with new forms of information technology coming out. So in the 1500s, it was the printing press. The printing press was invented, and the printing press played a huge role in the Protestant Reformation, right? So when the Catholic Church is the Catholic Church's power really got challenged for the first time, and we see a break with the Catholic Church and what became all of the Protestant denominations. But it was because people had Bibles. And Martin Luther, who started the Protestant Reformation when he tacked his 99 Theses up onto the church door and challenged the power of the Catholic Church, the universal power of the Catholic Church, he encouraged people to read their own Bibles and said that, we don't need the Pope and the Catholic Church to intervene for us in our relationship with the divine. We have access to that ourselves. We have Bibles, right? And we also see in this period during the 1500s, the last time Pluto was in Aquarius, that the Catholic Church really pushed back and tried to control information. It's worth paying attention to. And in the American Revolution, I was very interested to hear an interview with James Corbett recently. He was talking to Dr. Drew. He was on Dr. Drew's podcast. And he talked about how during the American Revolution that the king, the monarchy, actually tried to say that early colonists who owned a printing press needed to be licensed so that they had some control over what was printed and circulated in the colony, right? So what really helped convince people that they were in a revolution was, of course, the pamphleteers. Thomas Paine is famous for all of the pamphlets that he circulated during the revolution that convinced people that, oh, yeah, this is a revolution. We are in a revolution. So there's a connection with Pluto in Aquarius with information. Aquarius Aquarius is an air sign. It has to do with thinking and communication. So the new ideas coming in through new forms of technology. And this go around, I'm really seeing that as citizen journalists who are challenging mainstream sources of information. And we have so much access to information. We can really sit down and research, well, what is what is the power structure, right? And if we are going to successfully challenge oppressive power structures, we need to understand the nature of the beast that we are fighting, right? So information is going to play a big role. I do expect to see attempts as Pluto moves into Aquarius with control of information. I also expect to see oppression coming through new technologies or new forms of oppression. So, we're living in this track trace database kind of society where what we do on the internet is very much being tracked and traced and databased. And I do expect to see more control coming through technology. And I'll say more on that later. So Pluto moved into Aquarius for the first time in March of 2023. Pluto retrograded back out of Aquarius during the summer of 2023, and it went back into Aquarius for the second time over last weekend on January 20th of 2024. Pluto's going to retrograde back out again before it goes in November of 2024. Pluto will go into Aquarius and take up residence in Aquarius for the next 19 years. So we are going to be in that archetypal reality for the long term, right? 19 years of Pluto in Aquarius. And everybody does not experience Pluto in Aquarius in their lifetime. So we signed up for this one. We came here for this. We came here to be a part of this particular transformation. All right, so Pluto moves into Aquarius. And next up, we have Uranus. Uranus has been in Taurus since 2018. And Uranus does not really get down in the sign of Taurus, although there's no reigning Uranus in. Uranus gets down wherever Uranus goes, but Taurus might not love having Uranus as a visitor. That might be more accurate. Because Uranus is the planet of disruptions and shock, and trauma is a Uranian phenomena. Uranus is the lightning bolt, right? It's the bomb going off. It's sudden shocks. It's disruptions. In mythology, Uranus is Prometheus, the awakener, and that's really what Uranus is about. It's the Tower card in the tarot. Uranus brings destruction, but what it is going for is an awakening that comes as the result of the sudden shock, the sudden change, right? So Uranus is in Taurus, and Taurus is about safety and security and stability and economics and home economics, right? And it's our money systems. So Uranus is a very disruptive planet to have in a sign that is about safety and security. And we can see that, oh yeah, we have seen inflation, of course, with Uranus in Taurus. We've seen supply chain disruption. The markets have been wild and unpredictable. Crypto markets have been wild and unpredictable. That's all indicative of Uranus in Taurus. So Uranus is now getting to the end of Taurus. Uranus is in the last decan of Taurus, or the last 10 degrees. And historically speaking, when Uranus is in the last decan of Taurus, we see the breakdown of an old economic order. For example, Uranus was in Taurus prior to the American Revolution. Uranus stays in a sign for about 7 years. So as the tensions mounted, as the tensions grew prior to the signing of the Declaration of Independence and the war really kicking into full speed ahead, Uranus was in Taurus, breaking down this old economic relationship between the American, colony and this parent country, England. And then if we go to the next cycle, it was during the Civil War. And of course, the Civil War is the breakdown of an old economic system based on slavery in the South. And there's the battle to fight to really finish off the system and bring in the new thing. And incidentally, as Uranus moved into Cancer, that's when we see the Civil War ends with Uranus in late Taurus, but as it moves into Cancer, we see reconstruction start. And third, if we go to the most recent time Uranus is in Taurus, it's World War II. So we see the breakdown of an old economic system with the start of World War II. And when Uranus got into Gemini, there was the Bretton Woods conference in 1944. And that's where the new monetary system, of course, was created. So that's where we see the United States emerge, or the dollar rather, emerge as the global reserve currency. And of course, countries could trade their American dollars in for a fixed rate of $35 per ounce of gold. That was the exchange rate up until the 70s, which we'll talk about in another installment at a later date. We see the dollar emerge as the global reserve currency. The establishment of the UN comes out of Bretton Woods, the World Bank, the International Monetary Fund. So we see the new system set up with Uranus in Gemini, right? So with Uranus in late Taurus, it's the breakdown of an old economic system. The new economic system tends to be established with Uranus in Gemini, right? So we're in this time where we're switching into a new economic system. I expect to see a new form of currency, new forms of currency emerge as Uranus moves into Gemini. We're moving away from the dollar and toward central bank digital currencies, or digital currency issued by the central bank. So in the United States, of course, that's the Federal Reserve. And I'll talk more about that in a subsequent episode, right? I'll talk about that more later. But the key thing and the potentiality, right? All of these everything in astrology has a more challenged potentiality, challenged expression. So a more challenged expression, and then there is also the possibility, the positive possibility. And with us moving into a new economic system, what I expect to see as the grace is people uniting around their shared economic interests and uniting around their shared economic interests in a way that has not really been possible with class stratification, right? I think that people will see and recognize our shared economic interest and unite in a way that we have not previously as Uranus moves into Gemini. So Pluto in Aquarius, we've got this evolving consciousness, and with Uranus moving into Gemini, there's uniting around our shared economic interest, right? So next up we have, and I didn't tell you the time frame. Okay, so Uranus is in late Taurus now. Uranus is going to move into Gemini for the first time in the summer of 2025. It will retrograde back out and move into Gemini for reals for 7 years in spring of 2026. So Uranus takes about 84 years to move around the entire zodiac, and Uranus stays in any given sign for about 7 years. So next up, we've got Neptune. So Neptune is in its own sign right now. We've got Neptune in Pisces, and Neptune is going to be moving into Aries, and it's going to move in for the first time in the summer of 2025. It's going to move in and take up residence for reals for 14 years in February of 2026. And that's the way these outer planets move. They go into a new sign, they retrograde back out, they go in, they retrograde back out, and then they go in for real, with variation on how many ingresses there are before the final ingress. So Neptune is going to do this curious thing as it moves into Aries, and it's actually a conjunction. So Neptune is going to conjoin Saturn when it moves into Aries at 0 degrees of Aries. And this is where I tell my students that astrology thinks we're really dense. And if she wants to make a point, she doesn't make it one way, she makes it all the ways. Because 0 degrees of Aries is such a key. It's so rich, it's so significant to have this conjunction happen at 0 degrees of Aries, because that's where the new cycle in astrology begins, you know? The zodiac is a wheel. Circles have no beginning, they have no ending, right? Really, there's no beginning and there is no end. But Pisces is where we let go of the previous cycle. We let go of the whole cycle and we become merged with the higher realms of consciousness again. And Aries is where the new cycle starts, right? And we have Saturn conjoining Neptune at the 0 point, 0 degrees of Aries, where the new cycle begins. So that's really, with these outer planets switching and moving into new signs, they're opening up new archetypal fields. But the conjunction of Saturn and Neptune, whoa, that's action. The planets conjoining, oh, that's a really big signature of, like, it's telling us what's happened, the planet happening. The planets are the action, and this is a major conjunction. So Saturn, of course, takes 28 years to move around the entire zodiac. And Neptune, where did I write Neptune's years down? Let me see. Neptune takes 165 years to move around the entire zodiac. So Neptune has not been in Aries since the 1860s, 1861 to until oh, I didn't write my 1862 to 1875 is the last time that Neptune was in Aries. So with this conjunction of Saturn and Neptune, what we might, or let's say it this way, what astrologers often write about with the what we see under the Saturn-Neptune sonodic cycle. So the cycle of these two planets, right? It's referred to as as a sonodic cycle. So it's the conjunction, the sextile, the trine, the square, the opposition, the closing square, and then we come to a new cycle with the conjunction again. Is that these two planets, they are so wild together. Neptune, of course, you know, it's shaped like a trident. It's like the tuning fork that brings in the new thing, like as if from heaven, something new, something from the dreamy realms that's never been seen before. Neptune brings in the thing. And Saturn is the master of the realm. Saturn brings that Neptunian force down into manifestation in the realm, right? Saturn brings manifestation. Neptune is the dream. And the scholarship around the Saturn-Neptune sonodic cycle generally focuses on the way that this cycle correlates to the rise and fall of communist Russia. So in 1917, as the Bolshevik Revolution began in 1917, there was a Saturn-Neptune conjunction. When Stalin died in 1953, that was the next conjunction of Saturn and Neptune. And as the USSR began to fall in 1989, that's the next conjunction. So Saturn and Neptune are deeply interwoven with the history of Russia. And we also see, if we think about communism, it's this new form of government that hadn't been tried before. And that really characterized characterizes the Saturn and Neptune together. It's this new form, this new thing that had never been seen before, right? So with Saturn and Neptune conjoining at 0 degrees of Aries, I am expecting to see new forms of government, new forms of potentially global government. It's a signature that really speaks to me of the New World Order, a New World Order. And it's also curious to have it at 0 degrees of Aries, because Aries, it correlates to, it's this primal fire sign, right? And it correlates to the physical body or the self. And this is another place where, although I do expect this conjunction to have an impact on global governance, I also think I'm also seeing it in connection with this evolution kind of in human consciousness. Neptune tunes us into the higher level of consciousness. Saturn brings that consciousness down into the realm of manifestation. So, yeah. And and I also want to point very quickly to fifth generation warfare, which is really, there are articles out there. We're really in this time where what we're seeing, although there is plenty of fighting around the world, plenty like plenty of, lots of conventional kinetic warfare going on at the moment, tragically. But we're in this time that's characterized also by fifth generation warfare. And that is war that is being fought for our minds and our perception of reality. So it's really all of us that's being fought for all of our perception of reality, coming through our media sources, coming through social media. There's this battle really for the minds of the minds of men, the mind, for our psyches. And with Saturn and Neptune conjoining at 0 degrees of Aries, this beginning of the new cycle, the 0 point, I do have a curiosity about, fifth generation warfare, and just the battle for our perception of reality, which is going to be really, really key, right? With the evolution of consciousness that I'm really seeing Pluto moving into Aquarius, speaking to the uniting of all people around our shared economic interests. It's important that we really understand that we really understand the global power structure. So yeah, it's wild time, wild astrology, and we're going to be in it for the near, medium, and long term. So this is really the foundational stuff. This is the foundational astrology for understanding any other astrology for the next couple of years. It's like Rick Levine. Rick Levine talks about how the outer planets are kind of like the beat. They're holding the beat in the piece of music, right? They're holding this steady beat. And the inner planets move in and out and create some melody, but the beat for any given period of time is really being held by the outer planets. So if we want to understand the astrology that we are living in and moving into, it's really about Pluto and Neptune and Uranus and Saturn. Saturn is also very important. Saturn is, for the ancient astronomers, they hadn't discovered the outer planets yet. Pluto was the big heavy hitter, right? And Saturn was their outer planet. Saturn was their big heavy hitter. And Saturn is the lord of the realm. Saturn brings things into manifestation. So this is really the building block stuff, and I will have more to say on these topics soon. Thanks for listening, everyone. Hope you enjoyed it.